we're very lucky to have a nice keynote presenter who is Ruud Visser. I'll just say a few words about him and before I hand over. So Ruud Visser is an alumni from EIT Digital. He's worked as a software engineer for Facebook and Instagram, but now he's a founder engineer of Doppler, which is a startup it's the first universal secrets management solution for developers startup. And they very recently got funding of 2.3 million. So it's very impressive. Yeah, so I would like to hand over to Ruud now, if he's there. And
yes, thank you.
Looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you for the introduction. Let me see if I can share my screen. Can you allow me to share my screen so I can share my presentation?
Yeah. Paul, are you there? Paul should be making you a co-host.
Okay.
Maybe I can do it.
So maybe one more thing that's important to highlight. If you have any questions for Ruud, you can write them in the chat. And after the presentation, we'll have a moment where Jose Carlos, our famous voice from the audience, will ask some questions to Ruud.
Is Paul there? Hold on.
And also we want to thank Ruud actually for getting up so early, because I believe it's around 8 a.m. on the
West Coast, good morning, right? Guys, from me.
So you can try now to share the screen. I allowed you to share it.
Okay. Let me see if it works.
Cool. Sorry about
that should work. Let's see. Okay. Can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Yes.
That's good.
Okay. Well, first of all, thanks for giving me the opportunity to present here about Doppler and a little bit about myself. Before I want to jump into Doppler, I just want to explain a little bit about like who I am, what I did, etc., and who like how I ended up at Doppler, basically. So you guys see the slides, right? Just making sure.
Yes, we can see them.
Yeah, okay, cool. I'm originally Dutch. I was born in the Netherlands in Alkmaar, but currently live in San Francisco. I did EIT Digital from 2013 to 2015 in Delft and Helsinki. I'm a software engineer right now at the startup that I work at. In my free time, I like to mountain bike, climb. There's lots of outdoor stuff here around San Francisco. Next to work, I like to work on side projects. I have a small application, Stock Alarm, where you can set alerts on stock trading, basically. And next to that, I also do some advising for other companies and some angel investing where I can. So that's a little bit about me, my career. How did I end up in San Francisco? Maybe interesting. I started in Delft. I did my computer science bachelor's over there, as well as my first year of my master program of the DMT. I don't believe this track currently exists anymore, but digital media technology. Part of this first year in Delft, I did a course that was called Learning from Silicon Valley. This was a very interesting course because part of it was actually going to San Francisco and the Valley basically for about 10 days, and then like sort of exploring the city here. This is sort of when I first fell in love with San Francisco and sort of got my eyes on it. Then I moved to Helsinki for my second year. Had a great time over there, and actually bumped into this program called Startup Life, where they connect students with companies in San Francisco for internships. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do after my master's, so I just decided like let's give it a try. Let's see how it is to work in San Francisco, and so I joined a small startup. That was Flurry. I joined as an intern. I worked there for about 2 years and actually made it up to director of engineering. Granted, the team was very small, but it was a very interesting company to work at. A lot of funding, many different products, all around the live streaming space. We worked on a kind of Zoom application at some points, but then also moved into more like live streaming, like Instagram Live, for instance. Unfortunately, that didn't really pan out like many startups do. And I decided to look for a big company at that point. My whole life, I've been working for startups during my studies, internships, etc. Even some of my own. And I kind of wanted to see how it is to work at a big company. So I looked around and joined Facebook eventually. At Facebook, I worked on payments and in-app purchases. So, for instance, if you do a donation through Facebook, that would go through our systems, where we would build sort of a generic checkout system for any product within Facebook that needed payments. It was very interesting to work on as the payment volume was very high, just because of the sheer amount of users. Within Facebook, I then moved to a different team, Instagram for Business. Over there, I worked on messaging, the Instagram public API, as well as Instagram Insights for Business. I did that also for about a year, but then the startup sort of itch started to come again, and after about 2.5, 3 years, I decided to look for something else, and that's where I found Doppler. So to go into Doppler a little bit more, before I explain what a universal secret manager is, I kind of want to explain like what kind of problems we're seeing and trends, etc., and then sort of explain our solution to that. Before I do that, who is Doppler? Currently, we are a team of 4. Our CEO, Brian, 2 engineers, which I'm one of, as well as a developer advocate. We are hiring, so if you're interested, feel free to reach out, of course. Doppler started about 2 years ago, and very quickly got into YC. It did the YC winter batch of 2019. And as well, we raised about 2.3 million from, among others, Sequoia, Kleiner Perkins, and some other angel investors like Peter Thiel and, for instance, the founder of Box, and some other really great angel investors. So what trends do we see at Doppler? One of the main things that is starting to get really big that we see is microservices. We see many companies moving from one big service basically to having many different services that all run independently of each other and are deployed independently of each other. We see a huge increase of SaaS applications. So where previously you had to implement your own payment systems, now you use Stripe. Previously you had to implement your own text messaging service, for instance. Now you use Twilio. If you want to send emails, you use SendGrid. So there's a lot of these SaaS platforms that are now being used by companies and are sort of stitched together in combination with your own services. And another trend we're seeing is multi-cloud. Companies don't really want to be tied anymore to like one single platform. Every platform has their strengths, and we see a lot of companies that now, for instance, run their complete front end on something like Netlify, where you can simply connect your repository and they deploy everything for you, as well as deploying more complicated services on AWS or GCP, for instance. So, and the fourth thing is we see a shift from DevOps and security tasks that are now actually being fulfilled by software engineers. So a lot of the deployment, a lot of the security that used to be done by specialized DevOps engineers or security engineers is now shifting towards software engineers, and they are sort of expected to know about this. Granted, it's also easier, as you can now easier, for instance, use a service like Vercel or Netlify to deploy everything. That does not take away from the fact that you still have to think about how security works and how you deploy these things. So what is the result of this? First of all, bad security. Often developers are not necessarily they're not security engineers. They know about security, but don't always use the best practices. Think of things like saving secrets, such as API keys, environment variables, database passwords, etc. Saving them in plain text, maybe even checking them into GitHub, or sharing them over email or Slack or something. Because of the many more services that users are using right now, it becomes harder to manage. You have some of your secrets in AWS, some of your secrets in Netlify. Instead of one big monolith, you now run 5 to 10 different services, for instance. Who has access to all these services? What is the difference between development, staging, and production? All these things become increasingly more complicated the more services you use, as well as the more SaaS applications you use. And then another thing that we see coming from this is homebrewed solutions, or what we call homebrewed solutions. Companies often see that this is an issue. They grow, and at some point, usually when they reach about like 25 engineers or so, they see that it's not doable anymore to just share all these API keys and secrets over Slack or email, or have them in a 1Password document, for instance. So they build their own solution. This is very costly because it usually takes about 1 or 2 DevOps engineers and a security engineer, as well as a software engineer, to build this. When it's built, it's often decently secured, but then it's poorly maintained, which definitely does not help with keeping it secure along the way, basically. And the fourth thing is what we see is decreased productivity. Because there are so many new services, spinning up a new service with new API keys or onboarding a new developer is not easy. It becomes very cumbersome. Where does it live? For instance, you have 3 services that use Stripe to make payments. You want to roll your Stripe key because you want to do this once a month for security reasons. Now you have to go and find which services are actually using these API keys and who has access to them, etc. So what about existing solutions? We see 3 common solutions. env files to store environment variables and secrets. It's plain text. You cannot easily share it. It's very error prone because you change one API key and now you have to let the rest of your team know that API key is changed. You cannot check it into a source control, as you don't really want to check in any of your passwords. Often this leads to actually sharing them on Slack, etc. The second solution that we see is HashiCorp Vault, or another enterprise solution. This tends to be very expensive. It's very hard to set up for a normal developer. It's incredibly hard to work with and to maintain it. And the third one, what I already talked about, it's homebrew tools. It's expensive to build, not well maintained. It's not always that secure, and still pretty hard to use for in-house developers. So what is Doppler solution? we are trying to build a secure, developer-friendly, and something that works in every environment on every stack. So we call that a universal secret manager. What do we mean by universal secrets manager? With universal, we mean it does not only work in staging or production. A lot of tools like AWS Secrets Manager, for instance, works great if you work on AWS. If you work on local development, it's very hard to work with. If you have continuous integration, for instance, in GitHub Actions, if you use something like AWS Secrets Manager or HashiCorp Vault, it's a lot harder to implement and to work with. We want to make something that works in local development, continuous integration, staging environments, but as well as production. And not only production on specifically AWS or GCP, but across the board, where you can have services deployed to AWS and Netlify or Laravel Forge at GCP, for instance. Secrets, that's fairly simple. That's what I already talked about. Environment variables, API keys, app configuration, etc. And then the manager part is that we would like to make the one single source of truth. If you want to update an API key, for instance, you have a Stripe API key that you only have to update it in one place. It will automatically then be distributed to all your services that use this API key. Another thing with management is team and project management. What teams have access to what projects, and in those projects, who has access to local environment, staging environment, and production environments. For instance, you have maybe a consultant that works for you part-time for a couple months to work on a certain part of your services. You don't necessarily want to give that person your production environment keys. So that's part of the access management, as well as access logs. This is really important for compliance to see who changed certain API keys, who had access to these API keys. And then the last part is version control, where if you want to change something and you make a mistake, that you can easily roll back to a previous version that you knew was working. So if you would like to try Doppler, I made a special deal for EIT. You can follow this link. Also, feel free to ping me if you would like to have this link. We will give away our Pro package for a year for free for each EIT digital alumni. Also, feel free to reach out to me. Twitter, LinkedIn, Strava, that's the social media that I use. Yeah, any questions, really feel free to reach out. Any questions?
Thanks a lot, Ruth, for the presentation. Also to mention that Ruth is our local representative in the United States. We don't have such a large local community, but yes, there are a few alumni based in there. So I will now read through some of the questions from the audience. Yes, we do have a couple. As we imagined with the Alumni Board members, we were discussing that we imagined that there would be a couple of questions regarding your experience at Facebook.
Yeah,
so now
sure.
The first question from Hassan, that he would like to know how was the work culture like at Facebook. So perhaps could you share a bit more? How was your experience going through Facebook and working on Instagram products as well?
I really learned that culture within a company is extremely important, mostly because I saw how good the working culture at Facebook was. It's kind of incredible to see how Facebook grew from this very small startup 10, 15 years ago to like such a large organization, and still very much has this somewhat of a startup mindset in terms of like how to build things and how to prioritize. Everyone at Facebook is extremely motivated and driven. There's a very big focus on impact, where what often is said basically is like, which is a good analogy, I think, motion is not progress. What I think is seen at a lot of companies where people work very hard, but they work not in the right direction. The culture at Facebook is very much that if you work on something, you have to prove it with data that what you are working on actually matters. And for engineers and like data-minded people, this is very for me, it was a very good environment to work in because decisions that are made are all very data-driven and backed up by data. Does that sort of answer your question? I think Hassan answered the question, or I asked the question.
Let's wait until he posts a yes or no, and in case he says no, then we can follow. Yes, he says yes. So yes,
Okay, cool.
the question was answered. Then Yori asked, but I think Yori's answer question has already been answered.
Yeah, exactly.
But all right. Then also we have a question from Alex, and he says, well, first, thanks for the talk. How did you decide between a cloud-based solution and local install, which could be considered safer by some companies who could be afraid of saving secrets on your servers?
Yes, this is a very good question. We are thinking about having a on-prem solution at some point. We really chose to take the bottoms-up approach, where we feel like that a lot of developers don't necessarily have the skills or time capacity to spin up a dedicated Doppler solution within your own cloud. We do see this as a problem where especially larger organizations probably don't want to rely on a hosted solution that we currently have. However, before building this, we first really want to make sure that we have the correct solution, and we are very much on the way to that. And we already see questions from larger companies that would like to have an on-prem solution. This brings some challenges with it, but it's definitely a direction we're moving in. For now, the hosted solution is just the easiest to set up, and we really try to focus on making it as developer friendly as possible. Like we want to have a solution that basically can be set up in 4 minutes. Once you sort of like use that solution and you want to go even more secure, you might want to move to an on-prem solution later on then.
Sorry, I was muted. Thanks
No
for the answer. So we have a couple, actually 3 questions from Carlos. So the first one, he asks us, what is the business model and pricing of Doppler?
We charge per seat. So basically per user that uses the platform. We have it divided up in workplaces, which basically like one company has one workplace. And then for every developer, you basically have 1 seat. This is completely free for basic usage. If you want to do more things like extended access log, access management, for instance, giving some of your developers only access to local development or staging, but not production, single sign-on, more sort of enterprise features, then you will have to upgrade basically to a standard plan or a pro plan, which are $6 per seat or $18 per seat.
And the second question Carlos has is regarding the competition. So are there any other SaaS universal secret managers among your competitors, and any other solutions like Kubernetes secrets manager free?
Yes, we see some competitors. They are fairly small, and they very much try to compete actually with HashiCorp Vault. We took it a little bit different route where where we really focus on the developer friendliness. These competitors are still kind of a pain to set up. It's kind of a pain to manage. It is slightly easier than a HashiCorp Vault. It's cheaper, but it's still not a great solution. Sorry, what was the second part of your question?
So the second part of the question is, are there any other solutions like Kubernetes Secrets Manager free?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so we don't necessarily try to replace Kubernetes, or we don't try to replace AWS Secrets Manager or secrets in Netlify. We took the route to integrate with them. So we have Doppler as a single source of truth for your secrets, and we then sync them, for instance, to Netlify. So you never have to touch any secrets in there anymore. Same goes for Kubernetes. You once set up the integration with Kubernetes, basically, and then you never have to touch them anymore. You can just update your secrets in Doppler.
So I think Carlos says thanks for answering the questions. I think this is also related to Michele's question, because he asked something similar, or specifically, why should people choose Doppler instead of HashiCorp Vault? But I think this already was kind of answering your question, unless you want to add up something else.
I guess what I want to add there is that ask any developer if they that has like implemented HashiCorp Vault at their company, and if they liked doing that. I'll you can believe me when I say that, like, I haven't met anyone yet that says, oh, that's easy to implement, or that was fun to do. Where like a lot of our customers are like very excited about what we're doing, and like actually writing blog posts about like how easy it is to integrate and implement our solution. And that's sort of what we're going for.
Now, another question regarding the living in the Bay Area. Martin asks, well, he says that the Bay Area, as we all know, it's very expensive in terms of costs of living. Would you say that the benefits of living there are worth it, both as a developer and also for locating or basing your startup in the Bay Area?
Well, we live in interesting times now, of course, with Corona. It's a good question. I think a lot of people are wondering this. There's a lot of talent in the Bay Area. There's a lot of ambition in the Bay Area, and there's a lot of money as well. Really depending on what kind of business you want to start. If it's a very capital intensive business, I would definitely say that being in the Bay Area makes it a lot easier. Raising money is just so much easier. Finding talent is hard, but I feel like it's hard anywhere in the world. In the end, I think it, like many things, it all boils down to money. There's just a lot of money available here, and there's a lot of people that wanna that have money to spend and that wanna invest into to ideas and new enterprises. And yeah, that just makes a lot of things a lot easier, I think.
Sounds like it's worth a shot for the cost of living.
The cost of living is very high. Salaries are also very high. Everything sort of like grows with it. Starting a family is harder here, I think, than in many places. But one thing that is really special about the Bay Area, I think, is in the end is the people. There are just like so many interesting people that like you meet on every corner. There are so many people from all over the world that have interesting stories. Like almost no one in the Bay Area is from the Bay Area, but everyone that has a lot of ambition. Like they especially in America, they tend to come to the Bay Area, which is sort of like it creates this hub of people that have like like big ideas and sort of like the drive to actually execute on these ideas.
Another question from Josip regarding the culture. So how are you approaching the topic of culture in your startup? And do you have a person in charge of defining the culture in Doppler?
Yeah, for sure. That's a really good question. We definitely think about this. Since we're very small, like everyone sort of works on everything, you know. But we have like a sort of a living document right now where every month or so we go over this document, and part of this is like company values or like things that we want to that we think are important, basically, and we go over them and see if that still holds true. Like one of the things that we very highly value is strong opinions, loosely held, where everyone is very strong in their opinions and is not afraid to like say what they think is the right thing to do. But if you're convinced otherwise, it's also you also have to be able to sort of like let loose of your previous beliefs, or like it's not necessarily like everyone wants to be right. Everyone wants to have the right solution. It's not about being right. So those are kind of values that we like hold dear, basically. And yeah, we definitely go over these. And I think we can also see this we see this back in our hiring process, where we are very we really try to hire the right people, and we look at like in our questions that we ask during interviews, like we try to figure out, okay, would this person fit into this in this culture? For instance, can we have a good argument with this person, and can this person also argue why their solution is better, or then also maybe accept that whatever they came up with was not necessarily the right solution. And it's more about being able to like voice your opinions, but not necessarily need to be right, for instance.
All right, Anand has 2 comments on the chat. First, he thanks you for the pro license, and then second, he's asking how secure the keys stored in Doppler are. Good
question. I was hoping this question would come up. I didn't want to go too technical into the presentation, but we tokenize all our secrets. So we actually don't store any of the secrets plain text on our servers. We use a third-party service that is specialized in tokenization. So never we ever store basically plain text, any secrets of yours. And every time that there's an update or anything, we tokenize all the data, or like we send it over to this third party, and they basically give us back a token. So with that token, let's say our database would be breached, then you have a whole bunch of tokens which don't really say anything. Then you still need 2 or 3 more steps if you actually want to reveal the secrets behind those tokens, basically.
Now a question from Simine. I'm sorry, Simine, if I keep getting your name wrong. Since the summer school, I always pronounce it terribly. But she's asking, could you tell us more about the San Francisco course that you took when you were a first year at the Digital Master School? How did you find it?
Good question. I don't know if it still exists, actually. Maybe if somebody that would know it, maybe if Akos is still in the chat, maybe he knows. But this was a course that was given in Delft that was not necessarily part of the EIT digital program. It was part of the entrepreneurship track in Delft, and since the EIT had like electives that you could choose, I chose this one. I sort of bumped into it almost by accident, I would say. Yeah, I'm sure you can find online on like TU Delft if this course still exists. I'm not 100% sure about that. If you want me to elaborate more on the course itself, I'm happy to, but I'm not sure if this answers the question.
She says she will check. Thanks.
Okay.
So short in the short answer, Google it. All right. So we're running out of time, and I will take just 2 more questions. I'm glad to see that there are so many questions. So you can also find Ruth in the Alumni Directory and send him a couple
Feel
of
free to reach
if you
out
want to
on
know more.
like I'll put this slide back on so you can reach out to me.
Perfect.
On any of these two.
Great. So you have then Ruth's contact information. Now Borche is asking about the whole process of raising capital. So could you perhaps share with us some of your experiences and insights on how did you go along the process of raising capital? What were the investors looking at? Those points that they were most interested in terms of the growth or the trajectory that you were presenting. So how did you show these projections of what you were trying to do, and what were the investors really focusing on?
I must say that I was not a Doppler yet when the capital was raised. The announcement was made about a month and a half ago, but the capital was raised quite a while before that. Doppler really has, before I joined, spent a lot of time on building out the product, and before launching it, really nailing down sort of what the product should look like and how it should function, and really make it a seamless experience. Besides that, like I can share a little bit about like how it was raised. Like I think one thing that helped Doppler really was getting into YC, Y Combinator. I think the most famous incubator / accelerator in the world. That just gets a lot of eyeballs on you, getting into a good accelerator. There are many of those here in San Francisco, which is definitely like, I guess, another reason to be here with your startup. On the other hand, YC now does an online version of their batches. So that definitely sparked a lot of interest. Besides that, this money was not necessarily raised on growth. It was very much raised on vision and potential. I think Americans in general are very good at selling a certain vision and presenting sort of a picture of like what this company could be. What is very interesting for Doppler is that the total addressable market for Doppler is just incredibly big and growing. Like we all see it, that like more companies turn into technology companies basically, so that the market is growing. The market is already huge, and it's fairly easy to point to other companies like GitHub, for instance, like have a very similar business model like we have, and have been doing extremely well. And that's sort of like what investors like to see, is that you are really solving a pain point. Like what really works well for investors, if you can show that like companies are building in-house solutions for this that are extremely costly. They know that companies are willing to pay quite good money for it. And it already shows, like there are companies that pay over $100,000 a year for HashiCorp Vault, which is like that's just like an incredible amount of money. Plus, like that just means that there's a lot of potential there, basically. So even if you can only get like a small part of that, it could already be pretty successful. So in our case, it was really sharing the sort of like selling the vision and showing that there are that this is a real problem in the market, and that like companies are already trying to solve it, or by building in-house solutions, or by buying very expensive enterprise solutions, and that there's like a shift in the market where that the market is growing, plus like there's a shift in the market where companies are doing more stuff, or developers have to do more work, and not necessarily hire dedicated DevOps or security engineers for these kind of things.
Thanks.
I'm happy to go a little bit more deeper into this, but yeah.
That was a great answer. Thanks. And I was going to tie up this to another question that I skipped in the chat. I just noticed now from EIT to alumni, but I guess this was from Paul, who's the host of the session. That how do you recommend introducing this tool to corporate customers? How do you sell it to the corporate clients? But I think you might already have answered that. Or would you like to add something else on how do you sell Doppler?
Yeah, I think that's the $1 million question. Is like, how do we sell this to corporate clients? We really are now approaching it from a bottoms-up approach, instead of like hiring a big sales team and going after CTOs and convincing CTOs to implement our solution. We want to do a more bottoms-up approach. Like, for instance, what GitHub does or did is like developers basically go to their managers and like, hey, we need to use this tool. This tool makes it so much easier, and sort of like have it internally sold to them. This is a much longer route in a lot of ways. We probably will end up doing both, but this is a better way of learning. We believe of learning what our customers, what developers really want to have. Once we really know that like we completely nailed this, once we have found the product market fit, basically, I think we don't have that yet, but we're getting close to it. Like once we have that, it's going to be easier to also do top-down sales, and that's where we probably have to get into on-prem solutions as well. One big thing here, I think, is that it's going to be very hard to get our first big customer. Well, sort of once you have your first big customer, a lot of doors open, and it becomes easier to then look, this big customer that is much bigger than you trusts us, and that therefore you should trust us as well. I think that's going to be a big part of it.
And exciting to see what will happen in the upcoming months and years with Doppler. So we will for sure be following any news and updates. And unfortunately, we have run out of time. We have to end the Q&A for now. But I'm so glad to see that we had so many questions in the chat. Perhaps
very happy to
we'll also answer through the chat the remaining ones. And thanks again for the presentation, and also for these special deals and job opportunities that you have brought today to this keynote. Now I would like to, and thanks to everyone who presented these questions in the chat. I would like to give back
thanks for giving me the opportunity to present.
Glad to have you here. And now I would like to give back the mic to Jeroen and Davor, or Craig. I'm not sure now who's taking over for the, I guess Jeroen, for the closing words.
You can hunt to me, but I would just hunt straight back over to Jeroen.
So what if I would want to hand the floor to someone else now? Like, no. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the presentation. Also from my side, Ruud, it was very interesting to hear your story. With this last point on the agenda, we have reached sort of the end of the formal annual meeting part. So I will try to share a couple of thoughts that should remain with us for the coming months, and hopefully impact the things that we're going to do. Before that, I have a couple of more administrative notices, things that are good to know for you. So remember to vote, number 1. 2, remember to vote. And 3, remember to vote as well. Then number 4, some of the sessions that we had here today are recorded and will be shared on our YouTube channel. So you can watch back the state of the community session, the explanation of what we are voting on in terms of the bylaws, and also the keynote from Ruth is going to be available. And in addition to that, we'll also be sharing in our next newsletter some materials from the brainstorming. So the Miro board that Gafar has been working on, we'll continue the work, really making sure that everything is there and share that with you. So that can be a nice starting point as well. Then following this session now, we have like an hour break to grab some dinner. We'll leave the call open for you so you can hang out. I have heard that Davor has some more Croatian music for us to listen to, so we can enjoy our moment in Split. And as you all know, at 7 we'll resume for a pub quiz where I may recommend you to bring some beers just to make sure that the night will be double the amount of fun. Also for Ruud, it might be a bit early for you to drink, but if you want to join us, feel free to do so. I know that Balázs will also be adjusting to our time zone in that regard.
I'll stick to water for now.
And then, well, a couple of more things. Like this annual meeting was a bit of a strange one. I would really like to thank you all for attending this. I think 2020, in short, was a very strange year. We haven't reached the end yet, but we are approaching Christmas, in which I hope all of you will spend some time with the family wherever possible. Sadly, 2020 wasn't the year in which we had a physical annual meeting. It also wasn't the year where we had a kickoff, graduation ceremony, all the events that we're usually used to, conferences, meeting friends, traveling, all the fun stuff that Digital Alumni usually stands for. But on the other side, 2020 was a year in which we all got to innovate. We had more and more online events, successful online events. We had a first online annual meeting now that feels still a bit strange, but hopefully was enjoyable for all of you. We had an alumni hack, record number of startup projects within our community that wanted to showcase themselves in the startup of the year competition. We managed to have global impact due to these things that we're doing online. How easy or how cool is it to have Ruud as a keynote speaker here while he is sitting on the other side of the world? Something that would have never happened in our traditional annual meeting as such. And I think it's quite an achievement that in 2020, we continue to do what we do best, building a community, helping each other, and making sure that, that we are united. So us surviving that makes me very hopeful for what the future has to offer. I think we have great things ahead of us. Together, we can really shape the future of the Digital Alumni. We can organize bigger, bolder, more ambitious, more innovative events, offline or online. I really hope that more things will happen online. Together, we can help each other in finding jobs, supporting each other in learning new skills, learning new things, helping each other to grow. And I'm confident with all of that, that the future of the EIT Digital Alumni is looking bright, although the world is in a little bit of a difficult and challenging place right now. So let's build this bright future together, and let's shape what we want the EIT Digital Alumni to be together. With that, for me, that was the official part of the annual meeting 2020. Let me remind you to not forget to vote, and I will see you all in an hour for the social program. Thank you very much. Yeah, Davor, we are waiting for your Croatian music.
I will stop the recording.